Have you ever noticed how the rules of what makes a great leader can completely flip the moment you cross a border? We live in an incredibly interconnected world, but what works flawlessly in a Chicago boardroom might literally cause a total breakdown in communication if you try it in Paris or Sydney. So today in this explainer, we're unpacking the unwritten rules of global influence and how you can adapt your own style for any audience, anywhere.
Leadership isn't exactly a rigid, measurable science. It's actually often described as a kind of magic used to inspire action. It's this invisible force. You can't just put it in a spreadsheet or track it with a software tool, right? But you absolutely know when it's in the room. When a leader really harnesses this magic, a team becomes brisk, earnest, and fiercely committed to a common objective. They aren't just working, they genuinely believe in the work.
And we really have to draw a line between managing compliance and truly leading with influence. Think about management for a second. It's about governance, rationality, and allocating resources effectively. Those are vital skills to keep the lights on. But leadership, that elevates things way past basic rationality right into innovation. It replaces mere compliance with profound, undeniable inspiration. Basically, management makes sure the ship runs efficiently, but leadership is what makes the crew actually want to sail the open ocean with you.
So here is our itinerary for this explainer. First, the magic of influence. Second, the 5 pillars of leadership. Then we'll explore Australian egalitarian leadership, European styles, American strategic speed, and finish up with some key takeaways for global leaders.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, the magic of influence. True influence always starts with the why. If you only tell your people what to do, you're just going to get basic compliance. They'll punch the clock, do the bare minimum, and go home. But when you tie the work to a really clear purpose and foster deep psychological safety, wow, that unlocks genuine passion. The real magic happens when you connect with a team's intrinsic motivations, tossing out that old stick and carrot approach for values-based inspiration that genuinely makes people want to excel.
Moving on to section 2, the 5 pillars of leadership. Think of these 5 pillars as your universal baseline for building trust, completely regardless of your zip code. First up is action, turning those high-level plans into actual, tangible outcomes. That's fueled by motivation, which is all about blending intrinsic purpose with extrinsic rewards. Then comes guidance, clearly charting the path to success. Fourth is confidence, which you build slowly and steadily through undeniable competence. And finally, commitment, fostering deeply shared ownership of the end goal. If you master these 5, your foundation is pretty much rock solid anywhere on the map.
But here's where things get super fascinating. When we look at the globe framework, how different cultures rank these distinct leadership styles varies wildly. Pretty much everyone universally rejects the self-protective style. Nobody likes a status-conscious face-saving boss. But take a look at the autonomous trait. Germanic Europe values it incredibly highly. They expect leaders to be very independent. Latin Europe, on the other hand, ranks it quite low. It just goes to show you absolutely cannot pack up your home country style, export it as is, and expect the same magic to happen.
Let's head down under for section 3, Australian egalitarian leadership.
In Australia, you've got to drop the formal titles and lean heavily into plain-spoken collaboration. If you act superior or put yourself on a pedestal, you will instantly lose the room. Australian managers view themselves simply as first among equals. They use this great concept called post-planning, where meetings are essentially open forums to bounce ideas around and organically find consensus, rather than rigidly sticking to an agenda. And if things get tense, expect direct, self-effacing humor to diffuse it. The magic trick in Australian business is mateship, rolling up your sleeves and getting it done together as a crew.
But that famous reliance on mateship creates a really tricky modern challenge: proximity bias. With over half, 54% of Australian knowledge workers now operating remotely, leaders are hyper-focused on this. Because their culture thrives on informal, face-to-face interactions, leaders have to be intentionally mindful. They have to ensure remote workers aren't penalized just because they aren't physically in the office sharing a quick coffee chat with the boss. The magic really has to translate digitally too.
Next up, section 4, European leadership styles.
Over in the Nordic countries, bragging, it's practically a crime. This is all driven by janteloven, a cultural philosophy that deeply discourages individual superiority. What you see here is minimalistic leadership. Instead of barking top-down orders, a Nordic leader provides a vision and then completely steps back, trusting their highly capable teams to figure out the best route. They lead through prestige and trust, never dominance. The magic here is a quiet, deeply respectful kind of empowerment.
Now jump over to Germanic Europe, and the magic trick changes entirely.
Here, trust is earned purely through undeniable technical mastery, known as Fachkompetenz. If you're managing a team in Germany, Austria, or Switzerland, a fancy executive title means nothing if you don't actually understand the intricate technical details of the work. Teams expect you to minimize ambiguity with rigorous planning, crystal-clear responsibilities, and heavy documentation. It's highly structured, ultra-professional, and completely rooted in true expertise.
And then there's France. Think of authority there almost like a giant octopus. There is a much higher power distance, with leadership heavily centralized right at the top with the PDG. Leaders are quite often graduates of elite universities, the Grandes Écoles, and they treat business strategy as a grand intellectual challenge. To win respect and wield influence here, you need logical arguments, robust theoretical mastery, and the ability to carefully navigate formal, vertical hierarchies to secure that top-down buy-in.
All right, crossing the Atlantic for Section 5, the American Strategic Speed.
What is so absolutely fascinating about the U.S. is the accessibility paradox. American bosses keep their doors wide open for aggressive debate. The environment feels incredibly flat, and junior employees freely use first names with the CEO. But make no mistake, this is not a consensus-driven culture. The leader takes in all that input, makes a firm decision, and is held individually accountable for the outcome, whether it's a massive home run or a total strikeout.
And driving all of this momentum is one absolutely defining metric: 80%. That is the American threshold for strategic speed.
The second an American leader is 80% confident in the data, they pull the trigger. Why? Because the mindset is that a good decision made quickly completely outperforms a perfect decision made too late. They treat business almost like a high-stakes competitive sport. Momentum is literally everything. They use highly direct, action-oriented communication, truly believing that moving fast and course-correcting on the fly is infinitely better than suffering from endless analysis paralysis.
Let's wrap things up with Section 6, takeaways for global leaders. So whether you are coaching a Nordic team with quiet minimalism, guiding an Australian crew through casual mateship, or driving that aggressive 80% speed in the US, your adaptation is your ultimate global passport. You simply cannot force your rigid home country hierarchies into new regions. It just causes friction. Plus, you have to actively manage hybrid work to prevent proximity bias. Above all, tailor your specific brand of magic to embrace these cultural differences, because that diversity is your biggest asset for real innovation. As we close out this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. Take a hard look at your current team, your daily communication style, and the different cultures you interact with. Are you just demanding compliance, or are you actually sparking genuine action? The magic of influence is absolutely real, and it's right there in your hands. You just need to know how to perform the right trick for the right audience. Thanks for joining me, and keep leading with purpose.